Hello, everybody. Welcome to Live Long and Pastor. My name's Josh Ziefel, Dean of the College of Ministry here at Northwest University. And our goal in this podcast is to learn more about ministry from leading pastors. Along the way, I hope that you'll be invigorated, challenged, and for you pastors listening in, encouraged towards longevity in ministry as you live Jesus' calling in your life. Our guests today are pastors Sonny and Shawn Hennessy of Life Church Green Bay. Sonny serves as lead pastor there. Her husband, Shawn, is senior pastor and chaplain for the Green Bay Packers. Life Church topped Outreach Magazine's fastest growing churches in America list 4 times and continues to reach thousands of people. They're also involved with a podcast called The Rise After the Fall. It's a personal ministry of Shawn and Sonny to pastors and leaders, which includes coaching, crisis counseling, and being invited to rest and restore at their retreat center in North Carolina. And very notable for us here at Northwest University, they will be planting a brand new church here on the Kirkland, Washington campus of Northwest University in our chapel later this year. That's going to be in October, November, sometime like that?
October 5th.
October 5th. You heard it here first, folks. So welcome, guys, to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
You're this is the first time for this podcast I've had 2 people on at once. So this is very exciting for me.
Thank you.
I gave them a little heads up for the questions I'd be asking, and Shawn's been thinking about it. He didn't hear me say anything else. So I'll ask you first, Shawn. If you had to choose a fictional character to describe yourself as a pastor, who would it be and why?
I don't know if I would use it to describe myself as a pastor, but I would just say Ragnar Lothbrok from Vikings.
As a person.
I don't know why. I love that show.
Yeah.
It's a little raw. And I just like the flow of his character. And I stopped watching it when
he died.
I was going to say that. And then I was like, well, nobody's watched this. But it just
Spoilers.
ruined the whole show. Could I just say you have a Guy Raz feel to you? Do you know who Guy Raz is? He's my favorite podcaster in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
I think he's the best podcaster in the world. Anyway.
I built this.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll take that, folks. Thank you very much.
I do mean that as a
It
compliment.
is good.
All right, Sonny, how about you?
I would say Kristen Wiig. Any character she plays, that's me as a pastor.
Is he the one that does the character with the little hands?
The small hands, the Target lady.
Yeah.
If I could be her at all times,
Nailed it.
I attempt to do that with my staff, with life.
She's
Okay.
great.
Good. That's good. All right. Well, so that describes you both as pastors, right? A Viking and Kristen Wiig.
It's our marriage, too. I mean, it's pretty much how we wake up in the morning and go to bed at night. So, yeah.
Perfect. All right. So what else should we know about you guys? Family, other things? We'll talk about ministry in a bit, but personal stuff.
Yeah, we have 2 kids. Our son Isaiah is going to be 22 on
Okay.
June the 3rd. Our daughter Aubrey is 20. We're super excited that they're both called to full-time ministry,
Awesome.
living for Jesus. They are available.
Mm-hmm. We're working on their spouses, even though we're not in a hurry. We want to pick them.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we're working on it tonight. Actually, they're going to an event where I'm just praying as they're there that they'll know they found their future spouse.
Well, because this podcast won't come out for a while, maybe we'll know by the time it's released.
Yes,
At
we'll
least.
put that in the caption.
Yeah, that's good.
In the notes.
Yeah. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about the ministry work you've done in Green Bay, but also especially as we move on a little later in the podcast about your plans and prayers for what's starting this fall here in Kirkland. But to start off with, and also for those of you listening, some of the people I've had on before I've known pretty well or known before. This is literally the second time I've ever talked to these 2 people,
Yeah.
so we're getting to know each other. What led you to ministry? Tell me a little bit about your call to ministry individually, together, and how that came together.
Well, we met at Trinity Bible College and Assembly of God College,
Yeah.
probably the smallest
North
in the
Dakota,
Assembly
right?
of God in
Ellendale?
North Dakota.
Ellendale, North Dakota.
Shawn got there in a different route, which he just actually preached about on Sunday at New Life Church.
Okay.
He told this whole story if people really want the nitty gritty. And I got there because I got called to ministry after my junior year of high school and graduated early. So I got there at 17. He got there at 20.
20.
We met when he was 22 almost, and we got married within 6 months of meeting each other. So we got
Wow.
married before spring.
Okay.
Our ring was
The
far
ring was
before
spring, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then we finished Bible college for 3.5 years together. Like we went
did.
through Bible college the whole time together.
We didn't finish Bible college in 3.5 years. I managed to pack a 4-year degree into 5.
And I did it in 3.5.
Yeah.
We went to Nashville. Sean's a singer, so we went to Nashville
If
for
you
one
average that,
semester.
and it almost comes to 4 years.
So nailed it.
Together. One time I'm going to put you out there. Bible College, AG.
Okay.
This tells you why he's Ragnar. One time his professor came up to him and said, Shawn, you tell the story.
Oh my gosh. It was
I did some classes like one semester ahead of Shawn.
to be clear, it was a May term class. So most people don't take those seriously. And so I can't even remember the class. I had to hand in a paper.
Yeah.
And so I just went to our home computer and printed one of Sonny's off. On the bottom, on the ledger, it just says S. Hennessy at the top. So I just printed it, handed it in. And the professor came to me and said, I just want you to know, excellent paper.
Yeah.
My only question is, are you still involved in doing beauty pageants? And I just kind of looked at him.
Guilty
And I
as
went,
charged.
he was the announcer for our football team. He was the voice of the Lions. And so I just looked at him and said, bro, that was Sonny's paper. She took this class last semester. He goes, I know.
Whoa.
I don't know if he was the professor, but he said, I'm going to give you 2 options. You can either rewrite it, or you can trade me your first pick in the fall's fantasy football draft, and I'll give you a C.
Well, there's corruption on both sides.
So
yeah.
Can you tell us which one you
I
chose?
took the C, and he got Terrell Owens.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I won, he lost.
So a memory has been unlocked. You were on the football team at Trinity.
I was.
So there was a infamous game at some point in the last 20 years where Trinity lost like 100
They did
something.
the
Were you on
record
that
set.
team?
I was not on that team. I think it was 105-0 or something.
Yeah. Is that still the record for like whatever?
I'm pretty sure. And to be clear, Trinity doesn't have football now and shouldn't have ever had football. No offense to them. It's hard to recruit to such a small place.
Yeah.
But I will say my freshman year, I was among a group of young men who were brought there just for football.
Okay.
We almost treated it like a JUCO.
Yeah.
We were drop downs, D1 drop down, Division 1 drop downs,
Okay.
and we got smoked every game. But the one running theme that year was that at least once a week there was a fist fight in practice. There was a number of unsaved guys on
Well,
that
it
team.
was basically Teen Challenge for a while. Like the football team was, do you want to go to jail or do you want to go to Bible college? And we'll give you a free ride at Trinity to play football. All but Shawn ended up in jail of that crew that did
Good job,
fist
Shawn.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, people really should listen to your sermon. From Life Church Green Bay 2 weeks ago, or New Life a week ago. Once this
Okay.
airs,
Well,
it's
if I
fine.
find that, I'll put that in the.
'cause
Yeah.
it gets juicier. We can't spend
Because
much time.
to be fair, I was incarcerated before Trinity, so I didn't also want to be incarcerated after Trinity. So I got it out of my system before.
No, this is what
Troy Jones was also arrested at one point, so you need to ask him about that.
he never told that.
Oh yeah, yeah. He was arrested at a youth event.
No wonder we connect
Nothing
so well.
scandalous, people.
You need
Nothing
to change this
scandalous.
podcast
Yeah.
to pastors like behind the curtain, like what really comes out of
So
pastors.
good, right?
Pastors behind the curtain.
The high bars.
All right, so you guys were at Trinity.
We were.
You both felt called to ministry separately. Ended up meeting there. Got married right away. You're there. What happens after Trinity? What's the story from Trinity to Life Church Green Bay, where you are now?
Yeah, well, I just feel like God's hand has been so supernaturally on my life of favor from the beginning.
Mhm.
Like I got saved, baptized in the Holy Spirit, and called to ministry in 6 days.
Wow.
And so I knew
Yeah.
immediately that this was what I wanted to do with my life. And really, I wanted to do it with teenagers because I felt like had somebody exposed me to Jesus earlier, the amount of heartache that it would have kept me from
Yeah.
would have been, life-changing. And so I knew it's what I wanted to do. And so, Ellendale, North Dakota, it's not the end of the world, but it's the last exit. So normally you don't get a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah.
But my junior year, I did get an opportunity to go and intern at a great church in North Carolina,
Okay.
Winston-Salem First Assembly of God. And the guy who was the youth pastor there at the time was a guy named Lee Terry, who
Okay.
ended up going on to be the Rocky Mountain District Youth Director, an incredible guy. And the senior pastor was a guy named Ron McManus, who
Yeah.
was legendary in the assemblies. And and Pastor McManus really took me under his wing.
Okay.
And really kind of, he was the first non-football coach who was really hard on me. And he really just kind of slapped me upside the head. And so then going into our senior year, we were given the opportunity to go and intern at Life Center in Tacoma.
Okay. Yeah.
And that changed everything. I mean, being around Pastor Buntain legitimately changed everything. It changed my outlook on life. He became a father to me. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to go on staff there. And it really opened up our eyes to what ministry could be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I youth pastored there. And then I went on the road for 5 years as an evangelist full time.
Okay.
And Sonny was youth pastor in Florida. And to this day, top 3 youth pastors I've ever met in my life. And so that opened up my eyes to this idea that you can be a partnership in ministry and you don't have to be selfish.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to spend all of my ministry promoting her ministry.
Yeah.
And so I left the road to be a district youth director
Okay.
in South Texas. And it just was this long road of really great opportunities that opened up for us. And what got us to Green Bay was actually the brainchild behind our podcast, The Rise After the Fall, is that our whole lives fell apart. It just came off the rail.
Yeah.
And it was revealed in me how deficient I was. And I think part of the reason for that, and honestly, Sonny is going to talk on this podcast, but part of the reason for that is that all of my life, I had been pushed through the system.
Yeah.
In everything that I was a part of, as long as your talent didn't cause disruption to the people who needed your talent.
Yeah.
Bro, I went to the University of Minnesota, played football. I never went to class.
Yeah.
I had a guy who his work study was to do my homework.
Yeah.
I was telling my son that the other day. He's like, gosh, how can I get a guy to do my homework?
Yeah.
And so it was just like always pushed through. And when I got into ministry, there was some of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the deficiencies in my life outside of Pastor Buntain were not confronted as long as I was performing.
Yeah.
And then I got to a place where that lack of character became so evident that I lost everything.
Okay.
And so then we went to Green Bay really to go through a restoration program.
Okay. Yeah.
And we went through a trauma-informed therapy program that flipped my world upside down.
Wow.
And revealed some things that were such deep wounds in me from an abusive childhood that I was like, I didn't even know I could be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we were out of ministry for a couple of years, and Sonny was working at a coffee shop, and I was a blogger, which means I was unemployed.
Kind of like being a podcaster.
I wrote 2 blogs. I did P90X. But on that break, I read the Bible cover to cover for the first time in my life. I'd been in ministry for a decade and hadn't read the whole book.
This is the dark secret of ministry. You can do a lot of things. Yeah. They always say, I tell students this, they say, you can't pour into other people if you're not being poured into. The dark secret is you kind of can. It kills you inside, but you can keep saying the things. So
it's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we had an opportunity to later on go to Green Bay and take a church that was dying.
Yeah.
And the Holy Spirit, it was the first time we'd ever been in ministry healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was so eye-opening to see what God can do through a repaired vessel.
Yeah.
I know that was a lot of me.
Well, where I kind of intersect, besides where he talked about, it was Life Center that really was the place that Pastor Buntain was a spiritual father for a kid who had a father live in the home and be non-existent and not around really emotionally, spiritually. And so that I saw a lot of growth in Shawn, but also this acknowledgement, my life was more messed up than I thought. Okay. And so you graduate from Bible college, you pray, you're filled with the Holy Spirit, you go up to the altar every single time that you mess up or that you're struggling. But we had never even considered therapy. I mean, we didn't, counseling and therapy in our world 29 years ago, it just wasn't like it is today. It's good to have a therapist now, right? And so we never even considered we might need help. And we were madly in love and codependent and all the things that look like, well, that's going to keep our marriage together. And then when finally ministry got tough, when we went to a church that was kind of a wreck and we became senior pastors, we had to face ourselves in our marriage and realize that as ministry isn't going as well as it used to, now everything feels harder, including our marriage.
Okay, yeah.
And so that's where we went out of ministry. We were like, do we get separated? Like, how do we fix this? And we went through that intensive program. Yeah. And so, the podcast that really it took off. And that's where we ended up doing the retreat center, buying this 20-acre property to host pastors and leaders. It came out of us walking through restoration, but us also being very aware that we were limping along, but not the Jacob kind of limping. So we talk about this a lot on the podcast. We were limping along, doing good out in public and struggling in our house, but doing ministry, limping along. And once we fell all the way, we always say, don't just fall as far as like what was exposed about you or what you share. I'm struggling, half as much. I'm telling you half as much as I'm really struggling, which a lot of pastors do to maintain their credentials, to maintain their career. Yeah. To keep their marriage. And so we're like, if you're falling or could fall, just fall all the way, which means full repentance, flat on your face. Because when you wrestle it out with God, you'll walk out with a limp. And that's the right kind of limp. It's that I wrestled with God, I didn't let go until he touched me. And so that's really what this trauma-informed therapy, which now we rewrote it with a co-author, and it's called Journey to Wholeness now. Okay, yeah. And so we put people through this intensive program, but in our church and in our church here, we will always encourage people to go through this, whether it's a 12-week course or it's an intensive that fewer people can handle, because 2 to 3 days of intense therapy, and you're going through the neuroscience and the traumas, the things that happen at 4 years old that now as a 40-year-old man or woman, you've brought into your marriage. And so we're more passionate about healthy pastors that maybe didn't just have a clean nose the whole time, but have really dealt with things fully. And that brings us to today and back to the Pacific Northwest, where I think that opened, like the love of a father, Pastor Buntain, actually opened him up to say, I have deficiencies. And if this is what a father is, then what do I have to process that I didn't have all these years?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I'm thinking actually my own life here a little bit. The last couple years of my life, I've been spent more time in counseling and therapy, working with a spiritual director. And I joke sometimes when I talk to college students, I'm like, if you don't spend time with a counselor or a therapist by the time you're 25, you're just going to have to do it when you're 45. So you might as well start working through things now. So, yeah. A little bit about Life Church Green Bay. How long have you guys, was that the church that you kind of took over leadership of that was struggling? And how long ago was that?
That was 12 and a half years ago. And it was a 2-year-old church, but it was struggling. The pastor was leaving. There was it kind of struggled to get off the ground to start. It was only a couple years old. Little building, like where, 1-stall bathrooms and, we got there and you could fit about 100 chairs in the auditorium and you had to rope off half of the auditorium. Like that's how small it was.
Sounds like the little church I grew up in.
Okay, yeah. And so that is what we took over, and we came there from being campus pastors in San Diego, and it was what we heard the coldest polar vortex in decades. We're like, great. We went there in December.
San Diego
to Green Bay. In December to this little tiny church with no money. And yeah, it was a hard one. We prayed through for the first year to 2, just like, what did we do? And then within 22 months, we were in a second building, had built out a second building and moved. We had gone to 3 services in the first building, built out a second. In 22 months from arriving, and 20 of those months being super hard, 22 months in, we're in a second building. And within 19 months, we had built out a third building, and we were in a third building. In under, just over 3 years, almost 4 years. And so that's when we started to top the Outreach magazine's fastest growing church in America year after year after year. Actually, we were listed 3 times, and on the 4th year, we still grew by 37%. But, when you start multiplying
it's
at that
easier
rate.
When you're very small to go,
To go from 400 to 800 is crazy. To go from 800 to 1,000 is not as, you don't get on there as high. So, so we've been in that building now for, what's that, 9 years, 8 years. And it feels like it's still new to us, but just doing great. We put location pastors in place, and they're doing awesome.
Campuses of the church?
So we had 5 campuses before COVID. So that's why we needed campus pastors, location pastors. COVID, when COVID happened, we had 2 had to close down completely. 1 folded back into us. 1 went sovereign.
Okay.
And so we were basically back to like 1 coming out of COVID. And we actually, Wisconsin kept us shut down as long as Washington and California.
Okay.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
And so during that time, we went back to 1 campus, but we weren't able to do services outside. Like there was no, let's pull up a stage. It's Wisconsin in the winter. And so we were closed down far longer than we wanted to be. So to build back up after COVID, we kept a location pastor in place because at that point we had bought this retreat center because our podcast had taken off.
Yeah.
We were helping pastors and leaders. So we're like, well, we have location managers at our retreat center. We have location pastor at Green Bay. And God spoke, which now you should go, spoke to Shawn even during COVID about what the future would look like.
Yeah, I really felt like God said, I want you to launch 5 churches in 5 cities in the next 10 years. Yeah. And I knew the cities in it. Well, I knew 4 of the cities and I knew the order. And I think I knew all 5, but I didn't want to admit the 5th. But it was Seattle, Portland, Detroit, Vancouver, British Columbia, and LA. Okay. And so we're in the process of that. And the purpose of those 5 cities is because when he gave me the vision for that, as he said, I want you to run in where others are running from. Okay. Yeah. And so hard cities, liberal cities, very challenging, expensive cities.
Welcome to the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. And so, Seattle has been on my heart. I never wanted to leave. We left in 2003. Yeah. I didn't want to leave. I've always loved it here. And so the idea of it really feeling like home, and God's really almost done a work of completion here because my kids love it here. Okay. And my kids want to do ministry here and they want to live here. And so the last cog in that wheel was Sonny, and she fell in love with here. And so it's an interesting adventure. I didn't want to plant a church. I fought it. We've been fighting it
for 5 years.
Yeah.
Since COVID.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just kept telling her I'm not going to plant a church. Yeah. I don't want to plant a church. I'm too old to plant a church. And so now we're going to plant a church.
So what was the thing that finally, the straw that broke the camel's back? You were fighting for 5 years.
Okay. from the school, from Northwest.
Well, the apex of it, the genesis of the idea came from Dr. Brandon Beals. Okay. Who we were at lunch with him and some friends who pastor in Las Vegas, and we had just met him. And we kind of described to him that we wanted to take a broken church. We really like to rebuild things. We even do that with houses, and we love that whole setup. But then Brandon said, well, why don't you guys plant a church at Northwest? And I was like, because I don't want to plant a church. And then it's
I said, because there's a church there.
And because there was a church here. And so, but it just kept going over and over in our mind. And then it felt like it died. Okay. And then there was a church here that we started to talk to the pastor about the possibility he was going to retire and the possibility of us taking them on and revitalizing them. And then seemingly out of the blue, even though we'd been praying about it for 4 months, we did get a call from Dr. Castleberry. Okay. And said,
can you let me know tomorrow? Which is the best part.
This is just a few months ago, right? I heard some of the backstory here. Yeah. Okay.
We would like to plant a church. We'd like to have an Assembly of God church on the Northwest campus. Would you like to do it? I need to know in 24 hours. It's like, okay.
And we knew before. We weren't going to just say in that second, but we knew. Yeah. And I wasn't opposed to planting a church. I feel like when we went to Green Bay, it was like planting a church, but Shawn was very much like, we had a building, we had the chairs, we had at least 100 people to start. And I'm like, but I feel like we've got the chairs, we've got the building. It's, it's Northwest is not our own, but it's not like setting up in a gym. And so now we're completely confident, right?
Psyched about
We're
it.
psyched.
Well, at
I
this
can't
point, you
wait.
better be.
Right? Yeah.
Well, and hey,
Yeah.
I've heard that the final construction's going to be starting underway, so we're moving. So
Exciting.
it's been orange for a long time, so we're ready for it to not be orange anymore. So, okay, I know a little bit about this, but people listening might not. What and how are you going to plant? What's your plan for the next 6 months or so?
So we are going to have interest meetings starting August 31st, and then every Sunday night of September, interest meetings leading into the last couple Sundays before we launch. On October 5th, we'll do launch meetings, which will just look a little different. Feeding people Shake Shack, sushi, expensive things to draw them in.
I might have to visit.
Yes.
We would like that. And we will, right now we're working on the equipment to purchase for the kids' rooms that will be set up and making it look not like, we tried to make this look like a good kid. Like we're trying to make it look like greatest kids' room in the world because we're big about kids. We have a full gym for kids and a full arcade and a playscape that is like a 3-story high, size of a half court of a gym, just playscape in our current building.
Wow.
So to us, that's what we want to do here.
Yeah.
Like to us, we're not like, well, we can't. We're like, how do we do that?
Yeah.
So kids are a big deal because we want to reach Kirkland, the east side. We've got people we've invited from Seattle and Tacoma. So, although we will be on campus and we want to incorporate and have anybody who wants to be a part from Northwest, we want to be a full church that is kids, youth, families, marriage, journey to wholeness counseling, all of it.
Yeah. Well, I was excited to hear you guys. I mean, you guys know, I don't know if you know, I go to Venture. So Brandon and I are friends. My wife and I attend Venture. So he was telling me about this probably earlier than he should have,
I love that.
But I'm excited you guys to be here and I'm excited for you guys to be on campus. So, we're going to get to know each other more and whatever we can do to partner and support you, we've got, obviously, as you know, a lot of great churches in the area, but to have one right here on campus is great too. When I was in college, I was one of those kids that would maybe sometimes sleep on Sunday, and sometimes the church that I would go to was just the one across the street, the church there, and which is an opportunity to provide that ministry opportunity to students here on campus and get them involved and connect with them in a powerful way. In addition to, as you said, reach out to the larger community. I mean, Kirkland. I mean, well, here's the thing. There's a lot of people that don't know Jesus.
Right.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Here, everywhere, Seattle. I mean, this is a great place to do ministry, I think,
We had a couple in town who will be moving here. They were out and they've decided Issaquah is where they want to buy or rent. And they said, he said, I checked and AI told me that Green Bay it's a city of 100,000 people. Green Bay, it's small. And he said, I was looking at the comparison of populations and churches and like church sizes in Green Bay compared to the population of this area.
Yeah.
And although there's plenty of churches, like the number of churches versus population of the area. And he said, like, we got to be here. Like Green Bay's got it. Of course, our church is actually growing right now in Green Bay and in good hands. He's like, we have to come here. No matter if there were 10 more churches this year that planted, we have to. And I was like, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So you planted a church starting, October 5th. October 5th. I got to remember that date. So October 5th, like what are your hopes, plans, prayers for that first 6 months, that first year, or even 2 here? Like what are you looking to sort of, what flag are you looking to put down on the ground, or what community are you looking to build?
Yeah, we're definitely a lost-driven church in Green Bay. I think it's going to look a lot like our church in Green Bay, where lots of people get saved, and then get plugged in immediately. And so, I think it's going to look life-giving. I think it's going to look lost-driven, but still discipleship-focused, and a place where people feel like, if I've got somebody who's far from God, I need to get him there.
Yeah, I would say Life Church has grown so much over the years. And even, what was it, this past like February to April, we had almost 300 people get saved.
Okay.
This February through April. Wow. And, but always we've said, we will be trusted with who we can be trusted with. And if there are people that God will get out of bed and send them to a church and that church is going to give an opportunity for salvation, and that's us, we'll be trusted with those lost people. If it's like, well, we might not do salvation call, we might not really think that it's effective or it's not our thing, then we probably won't have as many lost people. And so, we're very systematic, structured in our way of connecting people and discipleship, but we have to be because of the people who are getting saved. I also would say that our church we've said it, we want people to feel better about themselves after being in our presence than when they came into our presence. And the same for church. We want to be a church that we would personally want to attend, not just lead. Like, I'd want to go there. And do people leave church feeling hopeful? Now, this isn't saying, do we just say a bunch of fluffy things and they don't have... No, actually, they may be very stretched and very, put to the test on some things, but they feel like hope and like, I can. And so that's where I think that's how we interpret life-giving.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that thought about, is it a place where I feel like I can bring someone who doesn't know Jesus? Because you do, as someone, if you're bringing somebody to church, you always get on the Rolodex in your head, like, what's going to go on here today? What's going to be said?
Who's speaking this week?
Who's speaking all those kinds of things. And and there are some, I think, not venture, just to be clear, but I think there are some places that I've been, I don't know.
It's cool you said that, because actually we need to write this down, Shawn. We used to say this a lot when we first got to Green Bay, because we noticed people were like, hey, I was going to bring my aunt or my cousin or my neighbor this Sunday. Is this a good Sunday? Yeah. And we heard that like the first 2 months, because it was an existing church. And we're like, what does that mean?
What are not the good Sundays?
Right. And then we thought about it. We're like, we've worked at churches where maybe the pastor's about to retire. And it's like, well, I won't bring my 19-year-old friend because, it's not their vibe. But I was like, what does that mean? And so we started to say out loud, like even on Sundays, and then we filtered how we do church through, it's always a good Sunday. We don't believe you can have a neutral Sunday. You either have a moving forward up the hill, like that was a win Sunday, or you have we went backwards a little Sunday. Yeah. I feel like just like a car on a slant. If it's neutral and like, it was okay, it slides back down. And so we were like, every Sunday has to be Super Bowl, not just Easter and Christmas. And every Sunday should be a good Sunday. And part of that was like, Shawn preached majority of every Sunday early on. People knew who they were going to get for preacher. Yeah. And we're going to really focus on that here too. It'll be mostly him. It'll be some me. But that people will know what they're going to get. Yeah. Like, we didn't change up even order of service for 6 years? Yeah. We're like, we will not mess with order of service, because the only person that thinks that's cool are like the Christians who want to try something different. But for the person who knows, I'm bringing my neighbor and I need to know exactly what my neighbor's going to get. Otherwise, I'm scared to invite them. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our services are an hour and 5 minutes long, and they don't feel short. Pastor Bentain used to tell me, you can preach as long as people will listen, but don't tell them everything you know at once. Yeah. So we preach the word, right? Yeah. Like we do biblical based series. Like we did 17 weeks on Ephesians. Yeah. So our people are getting a very we did 9 weeks on the book of James. Our people are getting very thorough, doctrinal, rich content. But at the same time, like I've been watching the Acts series at New Life, and like Dr. Brian. I mean, all their communicators are amazing. Yeah. But like some of the way that, a theologian, Dr. Brian's a theologian, and how he's made Acts seem so accessible. Yeah. People want that, right? Like they want to understand their Bible. And I think that the people who sit in the seats are going to duplicate the person who stands on the stage. And I am a shameless bringer. I will invite people to church. And I wonder how many pastors could say they don't remember the last time they personally invited somebody to church. Okay. Like I brought 2 couples to New Life on Sunday. I'm only going to be there that week, right? So I invited 4, and 50% of them showed up. And it was like, and here's my thing. They might stay at New Life. Yeah. That's okay. Yeah. They don't go to church anywhere right now. So I don't need them to come to Life Church Northwest, because we're a church for anybody, but not for everybody. Yeah. We're not a good fit for everybody, right? So some people want more charismatic. Some people want less charismatic. So I just want people to be in church. Yeah. I'm not trying to build a church. I'm trying to build the kingdom.
Exactly. Yeah. So one question I'm curious about. So, one of the things that's very interesting. So a little story about me. My wife and I are, met serving in youth ministry.
Come on.
But she is, trained as an elementary school teacher. I think when we moved here, she helped out in a small group with a youth group for like one semester. And she's like, I'm done with teenagers. In our marriage, I'm the one that's called the full-time ministry kinds of work. And she's called other things and does that very well. So obviously I attend Venture, where both Brandon and Di, as you know, are both equally and powerfully called to ministry.
Yeah.
And in your marriage, in your relationship, it seems like more similar to that. So at Life Church right now, Sonny, your role is lead pastor, and then Shawn, your role is senior pastor. So what is in those titles? What is in those areas of responsibility for you, and will it be similar or the same here in Kirkland?
Well, I actually took a step back because initially I was the lead pastor, and then Sonny was the executive pastor.
Okay.
And then I really felt like during a time of real focused prayer that Sonny is a better leader than me.
Okay.
So why am I the lead pastor?
Okay.
I'm just a natural communicator. And so I actually took a step back and elevated her as lead pastor.
Yeah.
And then I had the title of lead teaching pastor.
Okay.
Because my gift is teaching. And I think our staff was really excited about that because I've never met a meeting I don't want to leave. And so I don't have any interest in any of the stuff. And it's not because I'm not gifted, but if you took the SIVA test, I'm an artist. I'm an artist, man. My top two would be I'm an artist and I'm visionary.
Okay, yeah.
I don't have any executor in me.
Yeah, we don't want you to administrate
almost at all. Nothing. You don't, because now, like when we decided that we were going to plant the church, I have administrator in me, and I've had to access that more now than ever. But I think now I've come back to the title of senior pastor because we're going to have, these multiple campuses and multiple churches in multiple cities.
Yeah.
And I will be the senior pastor over all of those, almost like an apostolic. I have an apostolic calling on my life.
Yeah.
So almost like Paul, where he goes in, then he puts somebody into the position. And so I can't do that and fulfill the apostolic calling on my life and be a teaching pastor.
Yeah.
Now I'll be the lead teaching pastor, Life Church Northwest. And so, and I'll still go back in and teach and communicate at Life Church in Green Bay. And all of them, I want to have a voice in it. And so Sonny is an incredible communicator, but a world-class leader. Worked for a Fortune 500 company, just is brilliant. And I would say that if she wasn't here, I'm not fluffing her pillows. And our staff would say that.
Yeah.
And the people in our church would say that. Oh, yeah, Sonny's a way better leader than him.
Now, Sonny, are you sure you want to pastor? Because we have a presidential opening here at the school.
Sign me up. Be wonderful.
So, Sonny, how would you describe your leadership approach in ministry and in church?
So I would be a visionary, but I would be an executor of that vision. Like I would either take Shawn's vision and execute it and get it going, but I'm a people, let's do it together, like a culture creator, like kind of an architect of cultures and people. I want people to go beyond what they think their capacity is. So I really love bringing people around. Let's get this done, whether it's my vision or it's Shawn's or it's the church's vision. Let's get it done. So my leadership would be use the task to get the people developed and higher capacity, not let's use people to get the task done. I'm big on culture. I've helped churches or consulted for churches that they really just have a culture problem. Yeah. They think they have a PR problem, but they do because their culture is non-existent or it's going downhill and there's a lot of issues. And so the PR is bad.
When you have a bad culture and it goes public, you have a PR issue.
Yeah. Pastor really good. Said this, and I should have heard this before. Maybe he made it up. Maybe it's in some great book. He said, when you have momentum, you look better than you are. When you don't have momentum, you look worse than you are. And I was like, man, that hits, because when I have consulted for churches, once we turn that momentum and that culture around, they can't do anything wrong to people. And so I would definitely lead with people. I wouldn't say I lead through, I lead with people, but I'm not a micromanager. I don't really want to get in the minutia long term, only in the beginning. Yeah. So for you asked, what would we be doing and how would we look for Green Bay Life Church versus the Northwest Life Church? Shawn, going back to senior, where sounds more national, more global, senior. Yeah. I'll be lead pastor still, and my function will be to lead. Yeah. But lead teaching pastor would be more how it looks already at Green Bay and how that could remain, because he's the main and the one leading the way on teaching in Green Bay. Whereas here, it's not, he's on a teaching team here.
Yeah.
It's mainly him with a little me.
Yeah.
In Green Bay, it's him, me, our location pastor, and a couple other people.
Yeah.
So this won't have the teaching team here in the Northwest that we have in Green Bay. So they will function different and be in Green Bay less often.
Yeah. Okay. So based on our conversation, it sounds like this is the first time you're planning a church, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. So what have you learned so far?
It's a lot. I think the thing that's made me panic the most is of the stuff that we don't have for kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
That we're having to come up with.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like she said, you know, our church looks like if you took a Chuck E. Cheese and a huge arcade, we have a 2-story arcade, and a full-blown basketball court, and
put it at the front.
Put it at the very front of your building. How could kids not love that?
We
right?
do not have that built in.
Yeah.
Yes. So now I go, we're going to have to figure out how to set it up.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that scares me the most is that it's not all under one roof.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to figure out the logistics of how do we get kids to classrooms.
Yeah.
So we're working on a train right now, trying to have a little kiddie train that kids can be pulled to.
And tell about our other idea, Chick-fil-A like check-in for kids. Like print on your waistband with your iPad. And if the check-in people, our Life Church Northwest check-in people, need to be in a tent with a heater, like an individual body tent.
Yeah.
So that people don't have to get wet, but we will come to you and we will check. Like, we're like, how do we think Chick-fil-A level? How do we woo people with the fact your kids aren't in the same building? We'll make it where the babies will be in the chapel with the adults. But then how's that look? Like the most amazing nursery, right? But then, yes, do we have a train? Do we have... you know, that would be but we're flying in our kids pastor, one of our kids pastors next week to say, we need your brain. You've got to tell us.
So even though I'm not an executor right now, one of the big projects on my mind is I'm trying to find the best umbrellas.
Okay.
And I'm looking for an umbrella that you can fit 4 people under. And so I have 2 options right now. And one of the first options that I found was $240.
For one umbrella?
For one umbrella.
All right.
And so now I have found another one that they say is as good, but you can get it on Amazon for $39.
Oh, that sounds like a steal.
I ordered it, and it came to my office in Green Bay. It was the biggest box I've had delivered. It's so big, and it holds one umbrella.
Is it like those patio umbrellas?
It's like a handheld umbrella. I've never seen an umbrella like it, but they say it's like what pro golfers use.
Okay.
And so they can fit them, their caddy, maybe, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's so big, but I haven't opened it yet.
Okay.
And now you have to get it here. But it's to get kids with check-in adults.
Yeah, so can we walk kids? Can we get people so that people don't get wet? And I know that people here in the Northwest are used to having a mist on them at all times.
Yeah.
But like I think about those little things. Like if I'm a parent and I leave my 5-year-old to walk with these people in a line, and I don't want them to get wet. I don't want them to get muddy. I don't want them to get back in the car. And it's so like, what is it that we can do that creates this memorable moment for someone that they go, oh my gosh, I have to go back there. And so I'm reading this really interesting book right now about creating moments. And one of the examples that it gives is this hotel in California. And if you were to look at it online, it looks like any other La Quinta. It's just like a run-of-the-mill, cheap hotel that's not cheap. It's as expensive as the Ritz-Carlton.
Okay.
But it's little things. So, for example, if you're at the pool, they have a phone that if you pick up the phone, it is the popsicle phone. And someone will come to you with a popsicle on a platter to the pool. And they have gotten more 5-star reviews on TripAdvisor that talk about the popsicles. It's like this little thing it costs, like a popsicle costs 20 cents.
Yeah, it's nothing.
But to that person, it's like, oh my gosh. And people talk about the popsicle phone to the point where I read this book and I was like, oh my gosh, we need to go to this hotel. And then I looked up the pictures and it looks like a La Quinta. I'm like, I don't care I could go to get my own popsicle. But it's this thing that creates a memory for somebody that you go, what could we do in a church that does that? Okay, so we're limited in the fact that we have to walk your kids across across the thing. And I mean, we're giving the best product.
Yeah.
Such a bad way to view Jesus. But we have the greatest product that people need more than anything. But how can we package that in a way that's so memorable? So in Green Bay, we have a 100,000 square foot building to do that in. Here, we're going to have an umbrella.
A 4-person.
A 4-person umbrella.
What you'll find, I mean, you've been here, you've been this, but I mean, it's wet all the time from October to
We need to
now.
give ourselves a little bit of a break.
But it's not so cold. People will think it's cold, but it's not so cold.
Facts. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You've been to Philadelphia in the winter.
Oh yes. And this time of year, it's great. You can do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so you're here on the campus, and I heard you talk a little bit about your thoughts about being on campus and what that means. Can you talk a little bit about that? What does it mean for you to have a church that's hosted here on a university campus that for 9 months of the year has a lot of 18 to 22-year-olds here on campus?
One of the things I said at Network Conference was, if students are plugged into a church and in driving distance to their church, and they come to our sushi interest night, we're going to say, hey, you need to stay connected to the body that you're connected to. Yeah. But if you're from Yakima or you're from, Coeur d'Alene or from Montana,
you're not going home for church.
You're not going home for church on Sunday. Yeah. So of course we want to bring you in. But we stepped on this campus, and I'm in my grad degree here. And I mean, I stepped on campus and thought, I would have gotten my grad degree sooner. I just didn't think about it, and we weren't near any place like this. But I thought, I have to, because I've got to be a part of Northwest. Yeah. And this was before the chapel was an option. We were talking about this. I thought, this is the future of pastors. Like, this is where pastors are trained, and we have a heart for pastors. I have a heart for all people. Obviously, we're pastors ourselves. We love people and we want them to come to Jesus. So it's all people are important to us. But then like that niche that we just burn for as pastors. And so as statistics show that there's less pastors going into ministry, there's less available pastors for positions that are available. I go, this is going the wrong direction. And like, I ran a school of ministry when I was 25. I mean, we were first in ministry, and put dozens of people through Global University, because there was no going distance. You had to go through Global or Berean. They're now, it's crazy. I've got interns that graduated that planted churches, and they have huge churches they planted. And I'm like, wow, I remember when you were 19. That makes me old. But that was one of the best times of my life, to see ministers raised up. And at that era, it was like the Master's Commission and Bible College era. Yeah. It was the early 2000s where it was good to go into ministry. Yeah. But I always remembered people talking about their parents saying, well, but have a backup plan. Get a real degree if ministry doesn't work out. And for Shawn and I, there was no backup plan. Yeah. And I would tell my interns, if God's called you, why do you need a backup plan? That's like, I have faith with an asterisk. Like, no way. And that's what I feel like for here. I want to see, just out of the love for pastors and ministry I have, I want to see this school grow so excessively in the ministerial area that it is pushing out all of the other degrees, and they're like, hey, hold up, you're taking up too much space, right?
I'm excited about that, yeah.
So to put our feet on the ground, to have our feet on the soil, even if it's just Sundays, I'm like, I feel in me there's so much more than we're just going to be Sunday pastors. And if that means that I get to talk with you, and you guys, you have us on this podcast, this is amazing. If it's, I get to use my interior design skills to say, hey, I'll come over and help you with this area or the outside of this building. I wouldn't mess with this, but this isn't an outward facing room. I think you're fine. But I will be and do whatever I can. We own a coffee house in Green Bay that's standalone. It's 7 years old, award winning, in a downtown area. And, I'm like, we may or may not brew that coffee on Sundays because, people here don't know what our coffee is there. Yeah. But if I can be like, hey, I'll come be a barista one hour a week over at the coffee, like whatever, so that I can feel like I helped Northwest, I'm in. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. We'll talk more about this, but you guys being on campus and similar to some of other pastors who are teaching here in the classroom, would love to have you come in and connect with students, our ministry students, and
would love that.
Have them learn from you as well. That's a natural partnership. So we'll talk about all this. But
nice.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been talking a little while, so let me ask you a few more questions. I want to talk a little bit about the podcast, which you've already shared about a little
Yeah.
bit. So obviously, based on what I read online and the title, did this kind of start after the Mars Hill podcast? You kind of did a little play on the title.
Yeah, it was a
there?
direct response to
Yes.
that.
Okay. You know, the funny thing about podcast, and I don't know, I'm sure you have thoughts about that podcast. We all do, right?
Mhm.
I remember, like you guys do, when Mars Hill was
Yeah.
up and coming.
Mm-hmm.
And before, the dark side showed itself, they were doing some great stuff.
Incredible.
Some
Oh, yeah.
amazing stuff. And I felt like the podcast, what being called The Rise and the Fall, was mostly fall and not enough description of the rise. Like the whole music scene was hardly touched upon for
Yeah.
instance. But, so anyway, but that said, there was one episode where I thought he was being unfair. And then halfway through the episode, I said, oh, no, he's right. That was horrible.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But you say your podcast was a response to that. So tell me about that and how it came about.
Well, I want you to finish this thought, but to start it, absolutely, it was a direct response because we were, long form, it was a long form
Yeah,
journal. It was awesome. It was a well done podcast. We remember all of it. I went to Mars Hill and Ballard when it was still the
I
headquarters.
visited a couple times when I
Yeah.
first came here.
We were like, Mark Driscoll's doing stuff we've never seen a pastor do. He was reformed, so we definitely were like, we're not vibing the same all the time, but yes. Listen to that. And by the end, I thought, this makes you not ever want to go to a megachurch, have anything to do with a megachurch. This is deconstructionist at its best. This is let's get everybody emptied out of church. Let's have them hate purity culture and what purity culture ever did. Although I know people that they wouldn't say purity culture ruined their life. They would say, I like that I courted my wife or that I didn't go crazy. So it was like this undid everything. And yes, there was a lot of truth in it. But now we're left with just pieces and rags. And so that's where we said, let's do something.
Yeah, and it wasn't an attack on Mark or Mars Hill.
Our
Mark's
podcast.
what?
Our podcast was.
Yeah, our podcast wasn't. Like when I say it was a direct response to that podcast, it wasn't an attack on them. It was an attack on what she just talked about.
Yeah.
Mark's not my style,
Yeah.
but I did an entire series and gave him credit on his book on identity. Who do you think you are? I thought it was phenomenal. That's amazing. And so I thought there was really great stuff that he did, and their music scene was incredible.
That's what drew me in.
Oh,
Oh,
King's
God, I'm like the biggest King's Kaleidoscope fan in the world. Like right now, I love. I'm going. How many? They have a tour coming up.
Okay.
And I'm like, how many cities can I go and see that at? Because they're like, I went on their acoustic one, and I loved it, but I've never seen them full blown.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, they're coming to Portland, they're coming to Seattle, they're going to Nashville, they're going to Minneapolis. I can hit all those. And so I loved all of that.
Yeah.
But it was just this idea of what can we do to eradicate this epidemic of falling pastors?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the damage that was done when they left Seattle, it was measurable. There was a void left. We live in Bellevue. We drive by where it was. And there was a void. And when you have a church of that size and prominence in a city that almost brags about being the least church city in America, when they're gone, that's like, oh my gosh, the last beacon of hope.
Yeah.
And so then we started to just really begin to dig into how many friends do we have who have fallen? How many friends do we have who've done that to their city, who've done that to their church? People who will never go to church ever because of what you did, because you decided that you wanted to sleep with a woman who wasn't your wife more than you wanted people to go to heaven. You decided that you wanted to take money from your church more than you wanted people to go to heaven. And at some point, somebody had to hold people to an account to say what you're doing is sinful, but there is a recovery from it. And it may not be in ministry. And so our goal is to restore fallen pastors, but we want to restore them to their marriages. And ultimately, we want to restore them to Christ. But some of those guys shouldn't have been in ministry in the first place. The only reason they were in ministry is because they're eloquent. They should have worked for Amway and sold vitamins. Or they could have sold shoes at Nordstrom and made a lot more money because they're very fluent. And so fluency doesn't equate anointing. I know lots of people who aren't eloquent or fluent who are incredibly anointed. But I know lots of people who are incredibly eloquent and fluent who aren't anointed.
Yeah.
And so when we look at this idea of a guy's got to fall all the way, we want to go, who can we have on our show who fell all the way?
Mm.
They allowed themselves to be held to account.
Yeah.
And whether that's to a friend, to a board member, to a pastor. And so we started this ministry where we wanted to restore guys who were in danger of falling.
Yeah.
Because the challenge is, if you're a senior pastor and you have an issue and you recognize it,
Yeah.
who do you go to? If you go to your board, they're going to remove you. So you don't go to your board.
Yeah.
If you're a staff pastor, do you go to your senior pastor? Or you're fearful that you're going to lose your job? So there's this innate sense of self-preservation among people. So we're like, well, we're a safe place. Okay, so you can come and communicate to us. Why don't you let us be the middleman with your board or the middleman with your pastor and say, hey, listen, so-and-so is going through this. They have this. It's an issue.
Yeah.
They've been wrestling with this since childhood.
Yeah.
This didn't happen 2 weeks ago. They didn't just stumble onto this website, whatever this may be. Listen, they came to us, which shows a sense of repentance.
They weren't caught.
They weren't caught.
Yeah.
So how can we get them through this? So I even went to the extent to say, like, if the guy's a senior pastor, listen, I will be your interim pastor. I'll fill in for him.
For free.
For free.
Yeah.
I'll have friends that'll come in and they'll fly in. We'll fly him in. And what was challenging is it was hard to find people who wanted to come forward.
Really?
No matter what.
Now, the women, the wives, in the aftermath, we've helped dozens. We've financially, our ministries raise money to financially help wives and children who the pastor may or may not even be out of the church. They may have married. There's 2 instances. I mean, crazy. It's like carbon copy. Well-known pastors got with women who are 23-ish, 24, married that girl, that woman, and they're pastoring the church together, and she's the new first lady, and the 45-year-old woman with the 3 kids is not being supported and is struggling in court to get child support. That's 2 cases identical, and we dealt with that in the same month. And that's been going on for years. And then there's other ones that it gets even crazier. The ex-wife's living in a hotel, and the husband took the house and is still pastoring. And so we're like, we started to go, we were here to help the pastors, and they've lost their mind. Now, I will say, all or most of those weren't in a denomination. And we're like, the Assemblies of God would not have this. And the Baptists would not have this, and the Methodists, And so there are a lot of these guys that we had to take in because there was no one to take care of the women and the children. So one of our most famous podcasts was, what about the wives and children?
Yeah.
And then we did have, what about the men? Because sometimes the wife had, she's like, I don't want to do ministry anymore. I had an affair with the worship pastor, and too bad.
Yeah.
But the difference is, a lot of times those men can stay on staff. It's been hard that the woman doesn't lose her life. So it's been interesting.
It's a challenging and at times painful podcast to do. I mean, the one that we did, the What About the Wives, I can't tell you the threats that we got. I mean, threats where people were like, because we had her come on anonymous, and her husband was the pastor of one of the largest churches in America. I mean, if we told the names of the pastors of the wives, it would be like, what? Are you kidding me? And so people recognized the story that she gave, even though she was anonymous. And I mean, I had people that were friends of mine who were like, nah, you crossed the line.
Because of things like, well, she signed an NDA and got money. But I mean, this is, in some ways, I mean, this is how we are. We're unfiltered. But like the P. Diddy thing right now, like the girl, whatever her name is, Kim or whatever, his girlfriend that's suing, they're like, but she got $2 million settlement. I'm like, so she's in the wrong. And so we were hearing that, like, how could you take her side? Do you know what kind of settlement the church gave her? And we're like, oh, so.
I guess it was worth it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I go, yeah, and she's got 3 kids. And she got kicked out of the house because the house is in the church name.
Yeah.
And she lost her car because the car was in the church name. She lost her health benefits because they were attached to her husband. So it's like, okay, she was in desperation mode, right? Yeah. And that's one of the reasons, like, we were independent. Like, Life Church was an independent church.
Yeah.
For a decade. And I was like, I've got to come back under a covering. I mean, I had a board, and all of my board guys were AG. So I was like, I've got to come back under it. Because I would hear these stories, and I go, I've got to be under a covering, man, because I've got to have somebody who's going to hold my feet to the fire, because it's too easy to fall into stuff. And so anyway, it is a labor of love. Like she said, we spent $2 million on a property in North Carolina to bring them to and to restore them in. Yeah. And we've funded dozens of people to go through this trauma-informed therapy thing. Yeah. But if we could get people before, and so like that's one of the things, to echo off what Sonny said about Northwest. I wish that there would have been professors when I was on campus who were honest. Yeah. And I remember we had a guy who came, his name was Dr. John Catter. And John Catter was he was at AGTS. He was one of the main Bible theologians at AGTS, and he got a divorce. Okay. And so he had to land at the bottom of the barrel at Trinity in North Dakota. And I remember being a student, we voted on him. Like we were the church board.
The students?
Because
they brought
his wife left him.
Yeah, they brought him before. He wasn't remarried, but he was divorced. And so they brought him before the student body. They explained the whole story. His wife left him, blah, blah, blah. And they took a vote, a student vote of whether we're going to have him be a professor. And I was one of my favorite professors because he had nothing to hide at that point. Yeah. And he was just honest about it. And he talked in our classes about his failures. And he wasn't he didn't cheat on her. He didn't steal any money. I think she cheated on him and she left him for another man. But he talked about how he took responsibility for her immorality because he was an absentee husband. Yeah. And he would talk about that in class. And I would go, wow, this is like the first time. And he lasted there like a year and a half. He was too much for, the powers that be to handle that, because I think it was, now we live in a day where it's okay to be transparent more than 20 something years ago. So like I go, like I'm a wide open book. And I wish that somebody could have told me some of the things that I know after 25 years of ministry, of things to avoid. And these are things that we've systematically taught our church people, not just to do as a pastor, but to do as a human. Like you can't work 80 hours a week. You have to be present. You have to manage your finances. And
you have to get to your childhood issues like trauma. That's the thing. Like we now don't hire without people going through Journey to Wholeness, our program, our neuro-based trauma-informed therapy program. We don't hire without it.
This is awesome. Really, so I went to a Presbyterian seminary, but I'm not Presbyterian. But one of the things in the Presbyterian church they do is before you get ordained, you have to go through psychological evaluation.
Imagine, isn't that awesome?
And it's really hard to be a senior pastor in the Presbyterian church.
And I'm not a Presbyterian for various reasons, but I mean, man, you doing that is just, I mean, I know, I'm sure some people get irritated by that or whatnot, but it's so good. Why not find out more about what's going on in your life and your background?
Well, it's kind of like good pre-marriage counseling versus not. And now it's kind of like, I met with my pastor for one, or some pastors do intensive and some, it's like they don't do a lot. But frankly, wouldn't it be great if before you go into ministry, you actually know the things that might trigger you? So we're big on that. And we're trying to get pastors before they fall to do the program. But we now, just like anybody, we can have more influence over, like our staff. We're going to do Journey. And if that's a deal breaker, then you just won't be on our staff. It's okay. But now we're dealing with adults in a room in crisis at a staff meeting. We're not dealing with you're stuck at 13, you're like an 8-year-old who gets stressed and you're going to go home and throw a fit. And we wonder why we have culture issues and we have staff issues and church issues, because we're a bunch of kids in big suits thinking that we've already dealt with our issues. So it's a big deal.
We're Tom Hanks and big.
Yes. Yeah.
So if someone is listening, would like to find out more about this ministry, is the ministry called Rise After the Fall, or is it?
It's called theexchangecollaborative.com. So theexchangecollaborative.com they could go to and from there see What?
Well, it's called the Exchange Collaborative, but the website is Exchange
The website is exchangecollaborative.com.
It's called Exchange Collaborative.
So it is where you go to see about our retreat center, but also about our program and also about our podcast. So it's the nonprofit. That's what the Exchange Collaborative is.
What, last two questions are both about advice for pastors. The first one is if I'm a pastor and I feel, and I haven't fallen to the bottom, but I can see it from here, you know, what advice would you give me?
You want me to go?
Both of you.
Yeah, definitely. I think every guy or girl has to have at least one person in their life that they can tell everything to.
Okay.
You have to live your life open.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I mean, like we used to tell our teenagers when we were youth pastors, we used to say, like with dating, if your bar is I'm not going to have sex before I get married, you're probably going to have sex before you get married because your bar is too low. But if your bar is we're never going to be alone in private, like we're not going to be alone together. There's always going to be somebody there with us, whether we're on a double date or one of us has a friend that comes with us. Yeah. Because it just raises the bar of accountability. Yeah. And so many of us don't have any accountability. And so like one of the things that we did when we came back into ministry is I gave Sonny full access to everything in my life. She has all my passwords. I don't have anything hidden on social. If a woman messages me, like I just spoke at New Life, and this I don't know, millennial. I get millennials and Gen Z mixed up. So this younger female sent me a message talking about how great the message was. The first thing that I did was told her about it.
Okay.
I said, "Oh, look at this so-and-so," and she goes to Troy's church, and this is what she said about the message. Okay, so like it's hard to trip over stuff you can see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So have a very high level of accountability in your life.
I could piggyback on that to say, but I don't think that always can be from the person you choose because I don't think we'll choose the person correctly. Or we just look for the people who are already in our life and are like, maybe I'll tell them everything, but there's hangups or there's reasons we don't share everything. That's why I do believe that my answer would be Journey to Wholeness, that this program we do. I would look at any pastor and say, you have to do it. Do it now. Don't do it when you're in a bind. Don't do it when you're halfway there and your marriage is about to fall apart. Do it now. Find all of the holes, the history, the things in your childhood that you've never connected the dots, that's how you respond. Yeah. And from that, like the facilitators, the director, or the people who do that program with you, they can be that person. So for me, it's the person who I did Journey to Wholeness with that knows everything because I told everything. What do I have to hide? I talked about things that happened when I was 3 and 13. What do I have to hide? That's a perfect person for me to share everything with. And because I might not share that with my best friend or Shawn.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes if we pick someone in the back of our mind, we pick somebody who they're not going to ask me the hardest questions. Yep. We kind of,
we're selective.
When people confess to other people, we never want to say the whole thing. We go at most 75% of the way there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Wow, this has been very interesting. I didn't think we were going to talk about all this, but this is great, really.
We have that effect on people.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I think this ministry work you're doing is, well, I could Google it right now. We'll find the latest pastor who fell yesterday, or 5 minutes ago, or whatever it is. We've lived in the church in a culture where we don't want to talk about it. We just lie to each other and smile about, I have a whole rant one day about how we probably, when growing up, talking about relationships, like dating relationships when you're young adults in church. I'm like, if everybody would just be honest about everything they're struggling with, they could actually get to the bottom of it. But instead they're like, oh yeah, it's okay. And they're not, so.
Yeah. If people were as desperate to maintain their relationship with Jesus as they were to maintain their position in ministry, there'd be a lot more people with passion for Jesus. But people will fight and lie and grab onto things so they don't have to leave the ministry, rather than just say, here's the thing, if I'll just come clean and I'll do the work. Yeah. Like, bro, we were out of ministry for 2 years. I was unemployed. You know how embarrassing that is as a grown man with kids? Yeah. I I applied to TSA to get a job. They told me that they couldn't hire me because I had bad credit. I said, that's because I don't have a job. I can't pay my bills. I applied to McDonald's. They told me that I was overqualified. I couldn't get a job. I applied to so many places and couldn't get a job. And I was a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
And you know how embarrassing that is when, like, 2 years before that, you're preaching in an arena?
Yeah.
And now, but it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life.
Mhm.
It's the best thing that ever, for a year, we ate out once. We went to Pizza Hut. We got a medium pizza and the four of us shared a Pepsi. It was the greatest time of my life. You can say that now, coming on 52 years old,
Yeah.
because it was the first time in my life that I was honest and that I was real. And I was like, and I finally said, God, here's the deal. If I never go into ministry ever again, but I have a good relationship with my wife and my kids love me, cool. Just give me a job. You know, so anyway.
And I would say also two things can be true at the same time. It was the hardest time in our life and the best time in our life. And this is where we intersect on that rise and fall of Mars Hill, and you can have a rise, is that we can know the worst of worst stories. We can work with the wives of husbands and we're like, this is trash. And at the same time, I won't give up on the church.
Yeah.
No.
At the same time, the church with Jesus as the driver is the vehicle and is the hope of the world. Two things can be true at the same time. And I think if pastors can say there is some messed up stuff going on,
Yeah.
and at the same time say, and I love the church with all my heart, and we don't swing the pendulum one way or the other, but we live in the tension, we all win, and we will move the church forward for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Last question that I want to ask you. Similar to what I just asked, but let's say you're back in that arena, both of you, but instead of just 10,000 people, it's 10,000 pastors in front of you. And you have 30, I give you 30 seconds. You can say whatever you want to them. What are you going to say in that 30 seconds? Sonny.
Oh, I thought I was talking to pastors. To pastors, I would say, do the journey to wholeness. To people, I would say, don't limp along anymore. And if you don't think you're limping along, go dig deeper. I feel like life emotionally and spiritually is like an onion.
Mm-hmm.
And we often deal with the first layers, which are that flaky part that come off on its own.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of, that I went through a hard time and it kind of wore off the rough edges, but I'm not going any deeper. And the deeper you get in an onion of peeling it back, the tighter the core, the more painful and more difficult to peel that back. Yeah. And so I would say if you're a human living on earth, life has, and the enemy has tried to kick the snot out of you since you landed on earth, since you were born. And there are layers upon layers of hurt and wounds and many traumas that if you don't deal with them, you're limping along whether you know it or not. And if you think you aren't, you just won't let go of that layer of that onion called yourself. Yeah. And I'm telling you, I see God do more in my life and my family's life the deeper I get to that next layer. Like that sanctification, right? That I had sanctification begin at salvation. Mm-hmm. And I should be better tomorrow than I was last year. Yeah. But tomorrow I am just to the next layer. Mm-hmm. So to humans, to pastors, I would say all of that.
Yeah.
Boom. I think I'd just say we need to start living our lives with integrity. Mm-hmm. And the core word of integrity is integer, which is a math term, which means whole number, which means if you live with integrity, you're a whole person. You're living a whole person. I heard Pastor Phil Pringle from C3 Church in Sydney say one time, if you want to have success in ministry, preach your own sermons, mm-hmm. spend your own money, and sleep with your own spouse. And if you do those three things, you'll be a whole person. Mm-hmm. And get counseling.
Yeah.
Probably the counseling will help you do those three things.
Right. That's true. Thank you both.
Hey, thank you.
Talking with me today. If people are listening and want to find you on the internet, obviously, let's see, the Rise After the Fall podcast.
Yep.
The
The website.
Exchange Collaborative.
TheExchangeCollaborative.com. Where else could people find you online?
TheShawnHennessy.com. SonnyHennessy.com.
TheShawnHennessy.com.
It's just ShawnHennessy.com.
I thought it was That's your email.
My email is ShawnHennessy@gmail.com.
And we didn't get to talk about this, but Shawn is also the chaplain for the Green Bay Packers.
Go Pack, go.
You may love hearing that. You may hate hearing that.
Put it at the end.
I don't know.
If you're from Chicago, if you're from Minnesota, or if you're from Detroit, you're going to hate that this year.
Maybe so. I know another team in the NFC that might. Anyway, we'll move on. Thank you both very much. Appreciate it. See you.